how you joke. Okay, good.
John McCain has been dead wrong. I love him. As my mother would say, God love him, but he's been dead wrong on the fundamental issues relating to the conduct of the war.
I would like more opportunity for this. I like being able to answer these tough questions without the filter even of the mainstream media kind of telling viewers what they've just heard.
When no one in the United States Senate has been a better friend to Israel than Joe Biden.
I may not answer the questions the way that either the moderator or you want to hear, but I'm going to talk straight to the American people and let them know my track record also.
4 years ago, next VP debate is Thursday night. We're here on the Roundtable. We'll preview that in just a little bit. I'm joined again by Peggy Noonan, Paul Krugman, Karl, Mary Matalin, and James Carville. And let's talk about the other big news of the week, those unemployment numbers that came out Friday. I got to say, Peggy, I was surprised first thing Friday morning at GMA. The numbers come out. The first tweet you get is from Jack Welch raising a question about them. Ed Gillespie didn't bite, but what is that about?
Oh, it is about widespread skepticism towards the actions and efforts of the U.S. government to begin with. Second, I don't think anybody in America looks at the number, whether it's 8.2, 8.4, 7.7, and thinks that's a real reflection of reality. Everybody in America thinks they're not counting the number of people who've stopped looking, the number of people who are underemployed. At that point, the 7.8 number almost becomes academic. But nobody has faith.
But we know it's a lousy labor market out there. It's not what you want to have. However, it is an improving labor market. And not because of 1 month's number, but, 1 month, this is the whole thing. Jack Welch probably, coming from the corporate world, he doesn't quite understand how hard it is to fudge government numbers. But if you look over the past year, which is what you should do, you should not look at the numbers which bounce. There's a clear improvement. It's clear that adjusted for the changing and for the aging of the population, the number of people with jobs as a share of the relevant population is rising. It's clear that payroll growth has exceeded population growth. So this is an economy that is slowly on the mend. And in a way, the aberration was not this last month's number, but was the previous 2 months' number, where the unemployment rate didn't fall, even though the underlying situation was clearly
you brought
improving.
up the trend over the last year, and I want to come to you in a second, John. But first, let me put up this chart we have showing that trend across several presidencies of the last year of an incumbent running for president. And it does show, Mary Matalin, that President Obama's the improvement in the unemployment rate in the election year is in the green zone, in the zone where presidents get reelected.
Here's the real world, as Peggy alluded to. Real median incomes have fallen twice as much under the Obama recovery as they did in the Bush recession. At this point in time, under Ronald Reagan's policies, which Governor Reagan has a 21st century application of, growth and jobs are growing at 5 times the rate they are. Let's just look at last year. The states where 17 governors, Republican governors, instituted conservative reforms. Those states are growing their economy and creating jobs at twice the rate of the national economy. This is about policies. We know they work. There is no recovery in the history of any recessions or depressions that have been as slow and as poor as this one. And the revisions upwards, yes, it does, Professor Dr. Krugman. It's completely, totally
really
true.
Just isn't true.
I don't make up numbers.
But just look at them then, because the fact of the matter is this is actually a fairly typical slow post-financial crisis recovery, which is picking up speed. So although it's terrible, and I've been bitterly critical of policymakers in general for not doing more, the fact of the matter is we are clearly now in the upswing where you can see the beginnings of a turnaround.
And the challenge for Romney is that, look, it's not just the unemployment number here. Consumer confidence has been up for 6 weeks in a row. You've got the stock market is up. You have housing prices are up. There's a sense that things are still bad but getting better, especially, George, in the battleground states. You've got the governor of Florida going around talking about the recovery in Florida.
Same thing in Ohio.
You've got
Republican.
I'm sorry,
Republican governors.
Republican governors in Ohio. Right. Yes, but how do you run against the economy when the Republican governors
what
in
I
those
just
states
said. The policies put in place by Republicans are growing the economy.
You have a situation where Welsh puts this out. Now, this is a party that a large number of them believe in creationism, deny global warming, think that Obama was not born in the United States, believe that tax cuts raise revenues. So it's not surprising that they're going to believe. It's not surprising they're going to believe somehow or another to BLS. This is economic birtherism that they're getting into. That's what it is.
You have to keep your eyes just for a second on the fundamentals.
Thank you.
One of the reasons people don't think things are getting better economically is not only because they have eyes, but because they know our fundamentals are bad. The spending is terrible. The tax structure isn't competitive. They're looking down the road and seeing the president hasn't moved and his party hasn't moved to make this any better. They're thinking maybe change would be a good job in order to get
But that's the
growth.
imaginary public you're talking about there. Polls actually show that on the economy, it's now dead even. Despite the lousy absolute state of the economy, people think that Obama
you know,
is as
as I
good.
do, that spending continues to be huge, that our tax system isn't competitive, and everybody out there worries about that. Oh,
the
my
truth of
God.
that is people's optimism about the economy is increasing a little bit.
That's right.
Across the broad spectrum of things, from consumer confidence to the right track.
I've got to say one thing about this whole conspiracy theory, though. I mean,
you went in the BLS.
I went down to BLS. I talked to the woman in her cubicle who actually wrote the announcement, 7.8%. You know, there is not a single political employee in the entire BLS right now, not one.
Although,
I mean, this is crazy town to think that it was.
When you say that people
cooked.
don't trust government, this is the most trustworthy.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, there are the inherent problems of economic data, which are all science fiction, but these are very honestly constructed science fiction.
But most people don't understand, you do obviously, but how this is actually done. This is a survey of 60,000 households. George, it's a survey. It has a margin of error. A small one.
About 400 to 1,000 jobs it could be.
Yeah, the margin of error is 0.2%. Right. So you could have an 8% unemployment rate.
There are two surveys. There's the survey of employers and the survey of households, and they are telling the same story. They're telling the story of an economy that is slowly on the mend. Slowly, but slowly on the mend.
But it also shows... It's a belly crawl. You like to talk about your data, Professor. Here's political data. 80% or 3/4 of seniors, women, men, and independents think that the Obama policies did not help either their personal situation or the economy. Majorities of women, men, independents, and seniors and small business believe that the Obama policies have hurt the economy. This is about policies, and it is. Want me to read your data? I'm saying read our data.
The question is, the point is that if in boasting about the employment number, you know, the Obama people they're making too much out of 1 month's number, which everyone does, but there is a fundamental truth, which is that things are getting better. Not as fast as they should by a long shot. We're maybe a quarter of the way back from the damage that was done by the financial crisis, but we are making our way back, right?
So when you look at both events, I'm going to ask all of you to weigh in quickly on this. How much did the race change this week?
Well, I think it changed. I think Romney helped himself, but I think this was a clarifying event because now the Republicans are enthusiastic about Romney. They're wildly enthusiastic about Ryan. And the winner of this race is going to have real legitimacy. This is not going to be a thing where they say, well, he really didn't represent our cause. Now that if the president wins re-election, then you're going to see the sort of policies along the Clinton line when it comes to tax on top earners. You're going to see the health care bill stay in place. You're going to see regulation of Wall Street stay in place. You're going to see these things happen. If by the same token, if Romney wins, he'll have the authority of an election behind him. So I think this gives the next president a real boost when he gets in there.
I think one of the key things about the debate, it's changed. We will look back on it as a historic moment in this election. It upended things. This is what it upended. Barack Obama was supposed to be the sort of moderate, centrist fellow who looked at Mitt Romney, this extreme, strange fellow. By the time that debate was over, Mitt Romney seemed a completely moderate, centrist figure who he showed up as Mitt Romney the governor, not as Mitt Romney the candidate.
Except that everything he used to claim his centrism wasn't true. So this is a question, does that start to take its toll on him over the next few months?
I just think that is unjust. I mean, to say the very least.
When you say
When
you say my plan covers pre-existing conditions, when it doesn't, and when your own campaign has admitted in the past that it doesn't, what do you say? That's amazing.
You
that's
have mischaracterized and you have lied about every position and every particular of the Ryan plan on Medicare, from the efficiency of Medicare administration to calling it a voucher plan. So you're hardly credible on calling somebody else a liar. Here's what else it upended.
About that, but no. But the fact of the matter, I just think that pre-existing condition thing was a defining moment. It was saying this guy believes not only that he can say something that isn't true, but something that his own campaign has admitted isn't true. And he can say it in front of 70 million people. That's amazing.
The other thing this upended was Governor Romney effectively shot down the legions of straw men that the Obama campaign has erected against him. And Mitt Romney, the real Mitt Romney, is what was belied all the stereotypes and demonic mischaracterizations of him through $300 million of attack ads. So people got to see, as Ed said, the real Mitt Romney, and they like his positions. They supported all those positions, and they like him as a person, which is what he needed to do at the convention, the debate.
Also, Mitt Romney also nailed the president on not working well with the other party and made the point that he can work well with the other party, as he did in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
He set the record for vetoes in Massachusetts.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
This is
exactly.
He has an 87% Democratic legislature. You've got to veto a few things.
The choice is going to be, do you go back to the Clinton tax rates on people that earn over $250,000? Do you keep the health care bill in place, or do you repeal it? Do you keep Wall Street regulation in place, or do you repeal it? Do you have a foreign policy that leads with diplomacy, not war, or a foreign policy that leads with war, not diplomacy? That's going to be the consequence of this election. It may not be like everybody wants it, but the new president is going to come in with real authority here.
Getting back to your question, George,
Republicans are static about Romney Ryan now.
This is a new race. After that debate. I mean, imagine if Romney had come in and had a terrible performance.
No, then it
so you had
over.
what happened before, and then you had the jobs numbers on Friday. It would have effectively been over. This now is a real race. Republican fundraising has picked up dramatically this week. Look at the crowds he had just yesterday in Florida. He is a new candidate. He is somebody who now has enthusiasm.
He definitely got back in the game, but of course we're all going to be watching where the polls are in those battleground states, especially Ohio. Let's look ahead a little bit to the vice presidential debate. Both Vice President Biden and Paul Ryan setting expectations this week.
You're not going to rattle Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been on the national stage. He ran for president twice. He's a sitting vice president. What I hope to achieve is to give people an alternative.
I just want to make sure that when I say these things, that I don't have the Congress saying, no, I don't have that position, or that's not the governor's position. And so it's mainly getting the factual predicates for everything.
Now, this debate is going to cover a lot of topics, including foreign policy on Thursday night. But, James, it's clear from talking to both Ed Gillespie and Robert Gibbs this morning, they're going to continue to zero in on this whole issue of the Romney tax cuts. Is it $5 trillion or not? What does Governor Romney propose?
As they should. As they should. But what Romney proposed was he was going to cut tax rates to 20% for everybody. That's $4.8 trillion over 10 years. What they're saying is how are you going to pay for this? He says, I'm what unspecified, going to do away with unspecified exemptions.
It's a bird.
Yes,
right,
they should. They really should hone in on that. As Paul has pointed out, the Paul Ryan's plan just calls for cuts, doesn't say what the sort of cuts are. That's a legitimate thing in an election. What could be more legitimate than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's still the fact of the matter is that Ryan, despite, however well he manages to put it across, and however aggressively, Romney is calling for huge tax cuts for the rich, which he says he's going to make up for by eliminating deductions, but actually can't. The arithmetic doesn't work, and he's refused to say anything. I mean, this is amazing. You're saying I'm going to raise $5 trillion of revenue, but I'm not going to tell you how to offset those direct tax cuts.
Some ideas out there, like you said, with max, cap deductions at $17,000.
But he hasn't actually committed himself.
But he hasn't
to
put a plan.
No plan at all. It's amazing. $5 trillion.
The only thing that can sustain Professor Krugman's argument is to cherry pick data. He does not look at even a most recent study by Harvard researchers, your sort of colleagues. I don't know where you're.
That was a study that said you can do it as long as you include people with incomes between $100,000 and $250,000 as part of the rich.
I didn't finish my point.
It was nonsense.
Was our biggest driver for our debt and the biggest impediment to our economy is entitlements in Medicare. And the Ryan plan, we're not just talking about a tax reform, we're talking about regulatory reform that costs $10,000 per employee, that is a drag on the economy. And we're talking about fixing Medicare, reforming Medicare, which the Harvard guy said, had Ryan's plan been in place, would have reduced spending on Medicare by 9% in 1 year.
The Harvard guy is Martin Feldstein, former chairman
I'm talking about the American Medical Association report.
This is,
Well, look, Romney has not given.
Why it's not clear to say we want to lower the rates, widen the base. We will work out. This is a grown-up saying, I will have a legislature, I will have a Senate, I will have a House. We will work this out.
If you do this stuff at all.
Did this reform, tax reform in '86? It was a negotiation.
Wait, people have forgotten about the '82. Ronald Reagan signed on to one of the largest tax increases.
Reform, that was a tax
but
increase.
that's what kept the deficit from exploding.
Tax reform, which has to be worked out at a table like this.
But you have to have some notion of what you're willing to do first.
The issue here is that Romney has not put any of the details out. I mean that is true. He's thrown some ideas. He said he's going to balance the budget in 7 to 10 years while doing tax reform, while increasing defense spending, not touching Medicare. I mean, there's a lot of things that don't add up. But because Romney has not given the details, doesn't give the president the right to make them up for him. He is not going to have a $5 trillion net tax cut. But that's not his plan.
But I think the way to say it is there is a $5 trillion tax cut to be offset by mystery meat. And that's a correct statement.
Or
there's a $5 trillion tax cut. But we don't know what it is he's going to do. But what he has proposed is a $5 trillion tax cut. Plus, he says, "Trust me, I'll do something else different." That's not a very good way to run for president.
What could be more legitimate than saying you're proposing $5 trillion in a reduction in revenue? How are you going to pay for this? And he says, "Well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to let the Congress do it." And so you say, no, these are the things that you have to get rid of. You're going to get rid of the child reduction, you're going to get rid of home mortgage reduction, you're going to get rid of...
And we're going to have growth by unleashing our... He said it. You just don't listen to where you
we're going to rely on voodoo. So in the end, the story is voodoo.
You also want him to be more specific so that you can rouse people against this or this or this or this and keep anything good or helpful from happening with regard to cutting.
I think he needs to tell the truth. I do. You're right. And when
I want to have all of you back after the next debate because we obviously have a lot more to talk about. That was a fantastic roundtable. Thank you all. And for all of you at home who want to weigh in, John Karl's going to answer your questions on Twitter @JohnKarl. Just use the hashtag this week.